r/askReddit. What is a secret that you will never tell anyone? When I was 4 years old, I had hernia surgery. I wasn't supposed to go downstairs during recovery, but I snuck downstairs to find my toy toolbox and brought it upstairs to play in bed. I have never told my parents. This is so adorably pure. I was in high school. I had problems talking to people. I was the shy kid. I found out my cousin went to the same school, and I saw that he was on the same boat. He was a lot more social, and a lot more funny, but he just didn't click with people, just me. We became best friends, had a blast at lunch every day. One day a girl invited to go eat sushi, and I was stoked. I had plans with my cousin, tradition you may say, and just bailed on him. I was like, yo, this really cute girl asked me to eat sushi with her, and although he was upset, he was like, cool, have fun. Well, when it was time to go eat, I went with the girl and some people told her they were gonna go eat at X place, but they only had room for one more in their car. The girl without hesitating said yes, and just got in and left me. I was scared to walk through the hallways, scared to run into my cousin. I didn't have the gut to tell him what just happened. I passed by the library and saw him there, sitting alone, passing time. Broke my heart. I left him. Never again. Bros before everything. You sound like a really caring person. I think your cousin had to understand. It's not as if you flaked on him more than once. I had friends let me down when I was in high school, and I think it made me a more resilient person. I also did a lot of unkind, selfish things as a high schooler just due to thoughtlessness. The best you can do is learn from it like you did. Not everyone does. Bro, I think you should tell him. He sounds like he'd understand. When I was in high school, a friend confided in me that they had problems with cutting. Showed me recent marks. We had a long talk. I went to the counselor of the school and told them a couple days later. I was a teen. I struggled with the choice, but ultimately the fear of losing my friend won. Long story short, they ended up in a mental facility for a month and came back, absolutely baffled as to who ratted him out. Decided it was probably a different friend. Well, I married him. He still doesn't know. The real reason I was discharged from the army was because I was raped and wasn't able to tough it out. I always just tell my bros that I hurt my head or something. I want to add, please don't think of yourself as weak for not toughing it out. If anything, you're incredibly strong for doing what was healthiest and best for you, especially when it was likely a very stressful and difficult decision. Must definitely agree, stay strong. Navy vet. It's not on you to tough it out, it was on them to protect you and enact justice, but they failed. Please know you did nothing wrong. About 20 years ago, I worked for a big publisher. They were upgrading all their tech and just dumping it in a skip. I asked a security guy if I could take some stuff from the skip, and he said to help myself as it was all going to get crushed anyway. During a night shift, I filled up my car with a beige G3 Quadra Apple Macs, keyboards, mice, and some 19 inches Formix screens. Some of the Macs had Quark Express and Photoshop on them. I cleaned them up and sold the lot. I made enough to buy a G4 Quicksilver of my own, which I still have today. I didn't tell my coworkers, ex-wife, managers, or anyone else. Nice dude. People always underestimate business trash cans. As a teen, I stayed the night at my best friend's house and slept in their guest room. I was woken about 2 a.m. to the sound of her older brother arriving home intoxicated from a party. He saw me in the guest room and leaned against the doorway to say hi. He then stumbled down the hallway to his bedroom but never turned the hallway light off, and it made it difficult for me to get back to sleep. So after about 10 to 15 minutes, I got up and walked down the end of the hallway to the light switch. I turned it off and started walking back to my room when I briefly glanced into his bedroom as I walked past. His door was wide open and he was sitting at his computer with his back facing me. He was naked from the waist down, masturbating to what looked like transgender porn, can't be certain, but it looked like someone in heavy makeup, long hair, and with a penis. I must have made a noise because he swung around, saw me staring, and said, "Oh shit." Then I immediately and swiftly returned to bed and lay in the dark, not able to get the image out of my mind. 5 minutes later, I heard him creeping down the hallway. I was like, oh god, here we go. He looked so sheepish and uncomfortable. He stood in the doorway and apologized for what I'd seen and begged me not to tell my friend, his little sister. I swore I'd never tell them and told him it's fine and to go back to bed. To this day they wonder why he hasn't got a girlfriend, and they think perhaps he has a crush on me because he acts weird around me. LMAO, that last sentence. I used to work in a shopping center. One time as I was walking into the building I sneezed and totally shit myself. I was about 10 steps away from the shop, so I had to think fast. I took a hard left turn and walked direct into a department store. I only had $5 on me, so I beelined for the underpants section and got the cheapest pair I could find. I then had to go to the center toilets and sort everything out. It was a real mess. I texted my boss and told them I was stuck in traffic, but in reality I was 100 meters away trying to salvage any shred of dignity I could for the next 20 minutes. I'm happy to say the mission was a success, and that day is now the benchmark by which all other days are measured. Every day since has been infinitely better. Yeah, today wasn't great, but I guess it really wasn't so bad. At least I didn't shit my pants like that one time. This is the answer you use when asked, tell me about a time you overcame an obstacle in a job interview. I saw my friend steal 2 cans of soup when we were teenagers. I worked at a grocery store at the time and thought I saw her walk in. Was on my break, so I went looking through the aisles to say hello. Saw her with her back turned to me in one of the aisles. She had a big, satchel-type bag. I watched her toss 2 cans of soup in quickly and then look around to make sure no one saw. She didn't look all the way behind her. She would have seen me if she had. She started walking away and I cheerily called her name like I was just noticing I saw her. She looked so scared and broken. I'm sure she was extremely nervous about getting caught, so she just said hello quickly and claimed she had to run to her mom's car because she forgot something. She didn't come back in. This was a 16-year-old girl with 3 younger sisters and a drug-addicted single mom. The whole time I knew her, she seemed like the parent to those girls, not her mother. If she was desperate and had to take 2 cans of Campbell's so that they'd have something, anything, to eat that night, then who was I to embarrass her or say anything to anyone? That was really kind what you did for her and her sisters. I am so proud of you. When I was in elementary school, I once lost something, so I asked to go to the lost and found. In the lost and found room, which was a big storage closet, they also stored the Cokes for the pop machines. I took one. Then, probably 3 to 4 times a week, I'd remember I lost something else and go steal another Coke. I don't know how long I did this for, but I got a lot of free Coke. The proper authorities have been notified and will be contacting you shortly. 2 days in a row when I was in the 2nd grade, one pissed my pants, because the teacher had this policy where she wouldn't let any student go to the bathroom even during free time in class. The 3rd time I spent a solid 10 minutes begging her before she finally said fine. I pissed my pants on the way to the bathroom. My family only knows of the one time, but I had to deal with that humiliation 2 times before, and it was within the first week at school. After that I had a water bottle that I pissed in during her class for the remainder of the year. I don't know what she was expecting if somebody who just moved in with 0 friends would be doing in the bathroom. But honestly, if I would have the opportunity to go back in time, I would rather tell my own self to piss on her desk, because that would have been less humiliating than pissing my pants 3 days in a row. I had to turn off notifications on Reddit because this blew up beyond what I expected. It seriously got to the point where I was having a hard time going to sleep before work because my phone kept on dinging. I didn't expect me pissing my pants a few times to go viral. My 3rd grade teacher wouldn't let me go to the bathroom when I told her I was feeling nauseous, so I threw up on her shoes. My 3rd grade teacher wouldn't let me go to the bathroom one time, and I ended up pissing myself at my desk. Then she looked at me all exasperated, told me to go, and made me clean up my piss mess when I got back. My mom told me that if she ever refused again, I was to go up to her desk and piss all over it. Thankfully, it never came to that. Dude, how is this even allowed? I'm pretty sure it was basically the norm 20 to 30 years ago. There was a period where teachers wanted to demonstrate their power but weren't allowed to hit kids anymore. So they did it in ways like this, refusing toilet breaks, imposing detention for trivial things, and so on. The sort of things that left you terrified at the time, but when you look back on it now, you realize that you could have fought back. When I was at primary school, in the UK, it's the equivalent of elementary school. The head teacher used to have a punishment that involved sitting with folded arms, crossed legs, and back hard and straight against a brick wall. You weren't allowed to move so much as an inch for the duration of your punishment, ranging from 30 to 90 minutes depending on whatever random mood she was in. But no parents ever found out about it, or at least none that cared, because she made it clear loud and often that this punishment was for severe bad behavior, so nobody would ever tell their parents it happened. As an adult, I now know she was an evil calculating witch that shouldn't have been anywhere near kids, and that I could and should have told my parents. I think eventually she was found out but was quietly retired instead of facing any major repercussions. Funnily enough, most of the teachers left the school soon after. About a week before I graduated high school, my family had a massive house fire. We lived out in the country, and no one was home, so by the time anyone noticed it was on fire, it was way too far gone. 30 feet flames above the roof. We lost everything, but had insurance and no one got hurt. Anyways, I was in a chemistry class at the time that around 70% of the grades centered around a lab notebook that was graded all at once at the end of the semester. You would do labs every week, and then do lab write-ups in the notebook. I had been slacking off and was way behind on the assignment and would have had to pull a few all-nighters just to turn something in. The day after the fire, I went into class and told my teacher that the notebook had went up in the fire and that I had no idea how I would ever turn the assignment in. He was extremely nice about it, told me not to worry and gave me 100% on the whole assignment. Just said that I had bigger things to worry about and was about to graduate and that he hoped my family was doing okay. Well, the notebook was in my car the whole time. Threw that bitch away and swore myself to secrecy. All hail the chemistry teachers. I missed the class where we did our coursework practical that went towards our final grade. Teacher told me to come after school one day to do it. I was shit at chemistry. I showed up, sat down, and waited for him to come back to the classroom with the equipment so I could set up and start. Instead, he walks in with a piece of paper. He drops it on my desk, tells me not to get 100, and goes back out the room. Dude had given me the fricking answer score. I made myself get a 90 to get in the highest grade bracket and ended up with a B overall. Thanks, Dr. Bingham, you were a real one. One Christmas I was 9 years old and knew that Santa wasn't real, but for my 7-year-old brother the fantasy was very much alive and good. We shared a room and my brother woke up on Christmas morning and looked confused that Santa had not eaten the Kit Kat that had been left out. He went quiet and I could see that he was working the facts through in his head. When he wasn't looking, I ate the Kit Kat and showed him the wrapper and claimed he imagined seeing the wrapper unopened. This was 26 years ago and I have not told him in case he works out Santa is not real. Reminds me of my younger brother and I think we were 8 and 4. One year we got a note from Santa. We were very excited and I read the letter out loud to my bro. I don't know what possessed my parents to write this note, that Santa had thanked us for being especially good children that year, and to please thank our parents on his behalf because he had ran out of sellotape and had to borrow some of ours. My brother was so happy and ran off to tell our parents all about it, but I stayed in his room, staring at that note, wondering how the frick Santa would run out of sellotape if all presents were wrapped at the North Pole by the elves. And then it clicked and I was pissed. But I didn't tell my brother because I didn't want to ruin his day. I found out years later who ratted on me that I had my dad's prescription painkillers and that I planned to kill myself. I was super mad at first, cause I was hurt they never came forward about it. But then I realized why they wouldn't have when it happened. I was in high school, and while we had grown apart, I was really glad he told me cause it was what started my road to recovery from suicidal thoughts. Kyle, thanks for being a snitch friend. I appreciate you. I was on mushrooms, the special kind, when my mother killed herself. I spent the night surrounded by the police in the hospital and it has always really fricked me up. I thought about creating a throwaway to make this post, but frick it. I'm glad you didn't create a throwaway, you have nothing to hide. I'm very sorry that you lost your mom that way. It must be so hard to try and process all the emotions from that day, and that's awful for you. You didn't do anything wrong and the outcome wouldn't be different if you were sitting somewhere having a coffee. Be gentle with yourself. I hope you're okay. A friend had a similar experience. My friends and I were tripping balls while out camping. We were having a great night. My friend's phone rings and it's his dad. We are having a good time and he ignores it. His dad calls repeatedly and my friend isn't sure if he was calling again or the same call, and it was time dilation. This keeps happening and we are laughing at how it is like the longest ring ever. The dad texts a bunch demanding he answer and that it's an emergency. He assumes he is in trouble for something and eventually just puts his phone in his tent and we go back to tripping. We had a really fun night, didn't crash till the sun was poking up. 11 a.m. My friend decides to see how much shit he was in and calls his dad. His mom had been in a car accident and died before an ambulance arrived. I remember still feeling weird and ethereal from the acid, sitting in dead silence as I drove him to his house. His mom, accidentally, swerved head-on into a tractor trailer. When I was 9, my dad and I were reading Reader's Digest and found a magazine subscription card for a free case of Depends adult diapers, so we wrote my uncle's name and address down and put it in the mailbox. He got it a couple weeks later and called everyone in the family to find out who it was. We knew my uncle was fuming, so we kept it to ourselves. To this day, everyone suspects that it was my other uncle. Epic eulogy opportunity. This seems like as good a time as any to clear the air. It was me, at 9 years old, who signed Uncle up for a free case of Depends. And that's the whole speech. Revel in the tension-cutting laughter. This would break a funeral in my family. It would be the stuff of legends. Just last month we were cracking jokes at my aunt's service anytime someone would start to tear up. Those are the best funerals, where the deceased are celebrated and not mourned. This is not that good. I spent most Saturdays with my grandma and we would watch the same VHS of Moonstruck every week. I never told her how much I hated that movie. It's a good movie, but not when you're 8. We would watch it and then after we would eat ice cream and put on SNL. Opera Man era. I would give anything to watch Moonstruck again with my grandma. Edit. Thank you for sharing all these great memories. It's hard to look back and really get a sense of what was lost that long ago and to know that we are all reeling in the years. Hopefully some of us can be our grandparents to a new generation. Although Cher will never act again and SNL will never have this again. I loved my grandma so much and 15 years later I just wish I could see her again. That I wish she could be the great grandma now and just hand me a tissue so my eyes weren't watering. She always had a tissue in her pocket or sleeve. Grandma baller move. That's very cute. I got super drunk at a wedding, went back to a mate's place and slept in the car. Woke up very early in the morning with urge to poop and realized they locked the house. I pooped in the garden and covered it up like a cat. I pooped in the garden and covered it up like a cat. Best sentence I read today. When I was a kid, my friend did this a couple times because she had this big trees in her backyard and she said it made her feel like she was a bear in the forest, and yes, a bear does poop in the woods. My family only had one bathroom and I have definitely pooped in the bushes. One of my friends used to stream on Twitch. No one really watched him, so every now and then I'd log in with 2 different accounts, one on my phone and one on my PC, and interact with him for a few hours. Never told anyone since I didn't want him to find out I was his 2 biggest fans. This one is so sweet. You are a good friend. Probably 15 years ago my sister had a gerbil and one day I decided to bring it out of her cage and surprise her in the living room with it. Somehow I slipped on carpet and the gerbil went flying headfirst into the wall. It basically sounded like I threw a golf ball at the wall and the gerbil wasn't moving. Naturally I put it back in its cage and removed myself from the vicinity. To my amazement, the damn thing was still alive and moving around a few minutes later and lived another 2 years without anyone ever knowing that I basically Kobe'd it into the wall at full speed. My youngest sister, first grader, once accidentally sat on and killed her dwarf hamster, S'mores. I don't remember all the details on how it happened, but it was very unintentional. The next day, another sister, fourth grader, sends a video to the family. She had set her phone on the couch, walked across the room, started running at the camera, jumped and spun so she landed butt first on the camera. She edited the video so the jump and ass first landing were in slow motion. She captioned it, "Pov, S'mores last moments. Heartless but hilarious." Poor S'mores ending up dying just like a s'more, squished between 2 things. This reminds me, just a week or 2 ago my niece called me at like 4 a.m. crying. Her little sister accidentally squished a guinea pig that she shouldn't have had while she slept and my older niece found it, her. I got her to wake up her grandma, who babysits them a lot, because I was at work and couldn't do anything. It was sad. When I was about 8 or 9, the girl next door, who was about 1 to 2 years older than me, would always take me upstairs to teach me about sex education. She once convinced me to be naked with her in bed. Obviously nothing happened because we're young, and I wasn't old enough to understand or have feelings of that nature, but she was lying on top of me. I remember thinking it was weird. I remember she would regularly wave to me from her bedroom window whilst I was in my bedroom. She's be on her windowsill naked. I was oblivious, not told anyone about it. It was a bit of a case of one of those events that just pass kids by. Edit. Thank you for my first ever 1,000 upvotes. I used to play house with the girl next door, and part of the game involved going to bed together naked. We kept a sheet in between us for birth control purposes because we were like 9 or 10 years old and knew literally nothing about sex. Neither one of us knew where the parts went or how they fit together, but she had once heard a story about a 9-year-old girl getting pregnant, so she insisted we be safe. Had something similar with a girl from my neighborhood. We were both totally innocent to what everything was. At least I hope she was BC. I didn't know shit back then. When I was about 7 years old, my dad took me to Blockbuster and I really had to pee. Blockbuster didn't have a restroom, so I peed in one of the aisles. I'm pretty sure the cameras saw me, but thankfully there was no one near me. Wow, thank you all so much. I didn't think this comment would blow up like it did. Also, I corrected the aisles, lol. Good news for you is that most of the cameras in Blockbusters were fake. I worked at one for like 5 years, lol. Ours weren't fake, but the tapes recorded over one another every night. I shipped my husband's terrible ex-wife an envelope full of glitter from an anonymous P.O. box. Classic. I found out that Santa wasn't real in 2nd grade. My aunt's husband, not calling him my uncle, beat her horribly on Christmas Eve and destroyed all the presents. She fled to our house with her 3 kids, aged 3 to 10. My mom and dad put me, my sister, and 3 cousins in their big, king-sized bed for the night. About midnight, I woke up to my parents using a flashlight to pull presents out of the closet while they whispered about which of me and my sister's presents would get redistributed. The next morning, everyone was amazed that Santa had gifts for all 5 of us. I honestly couldn't tell you what we got or if there were fewer than normal. We were just so thrilled to be together that nothing else mattered. After that, I knew Santa wasn't real, but I honestly didn't care. It was my favorite childhood Christmas, as messed up as that sounds. Your parents are wonderful people. I hope things got better for your cousins and aunt. They really were good people when it comes to kids. They'd do anything for any kid, and every friend my sister and I had were their kids. My aunt's husband died a few years later, and 2 of the 3 kids are doing really well now, after some pretty intense struggles. So it's a mostly happy ending. I worked as a medical assistant in the early 90s. Right out of school, at my first job, the doctor was a screamer who would yell at us in front of patients, call us names, make us work during our breaks, etc. But the worst thing he did was make us work overtime at the regular hourly rate, $6 an hour then. So one day I told the office manager, who was also the doctor's wife, that someone had called from the state wage board and said they were investigating a complaint from a former worker about non-payment of overtime. The mandatory overtime stopped, and if we did have any, it was paid at the time and a half rate. Bonus, I got to hear the doctor and wife bitch and curse about it and wonder which ex-employee did it. There was a lot of turnover, so that was fun. My mom left me to be homeless while still in high school to move out of state with an abusive, to me, new husband. When I finally got back in touch with them 3 years later, they gifted me one of his prized possessions, a car. It was kind of an olive branch. Problem was, as a barely 20-year-old with a minimum wage job living in DC, I couldn't afford to plate it, inspect it, insurance, gas or taxes on it, nothing. Still full of hatred for this man and therefore somewhat out of spite, I sold it to a coworker friend whose big family desperately needed it for probably 10% of what it was worth. Told my stepdad and mother that I got in an accident and it cost $400 to tow and my insurance only covered blah blah. It's been 11 years. Very kind of you to help out a friend in need like that. Throwaway, because there's no chance of me ever saying this in person. As a kid, I grew up in a small country community of 3,000 people, where I went to school, etc. I had a crush on a girl who was 2 years older than me all the way through high school, and when I was 16 I found out she was my half-sister, as my dad had cheated on my mom. This only came out when she turned 18 and found out who her dad was. Prior to that no one knew, and my dad and her mom had kept it a secret for 18 years. Completely fricked with me for quite a while that I'd had a crush on my half-sister for a number of years. There's a lot of research about this happening and being largely unavoidable with long-separated siblings. Something about the familiarity is misinterpreted as attraction. Don't hate yourself, just be glad it never amounted to anything. One of my friends in high school lost his virginity to a girl he met at the mall. He had been sleeping with her for 2 or 3 months, and even broke the bed frame with her before he introduced her to his parents. Turns out she was his first cousin. Nobody in the family had seen her in 15 years after her mother had ran away with the kids with no warning to another state. That was a lovely ball of conflicted feelings he had to contend with. I can't remember how old I was. It was dial-up internet era. I am now 29. But we received a phone call. I am not sure if I was home alone or why I answered it. But a man called and explained to me that my dad had an affair with his wife. I hanged up and never told anyone except my therapist like a year ago. It has not bothered me much tbh, but it was weird experience lol. Okay, not my problem. Get it the line. I'd like to go on the World Wide Web. Who goes like, oh you're the 9-year-old kid huh? Should I wait until your mother is home? Nah. Okay well I have my speech prepared so just hear me out. I have something to tell you. 28 here. You just reminded me of this. Back when we had a landline when I was a kid, my crazy drunk aunt used to call and tell me about my dad's former drug addiction and how he abandoned us for a year. I legit don't remember that year at all. For some reason I've repressed it and I wonder if something worse than just him leaving happened that I blocked. My mom knows she would call drunk because she experienced it, but she doesn't know it happened when I was home alone or that she said all that to me. That's so weird to think that brain can block so good those bad things. I've legit thought of that myself sometimes. I once punched a special needs kid in the face in the school bathroom. Hear me out. I was taking a piss and he came up behind me and put his hands around my neck. He wasn't choking me, but he did have a firm grip. I zipped up and fricking slugged him hard. He ran out crying down the hall to his classroom and I just went back to mine. I was dumb and I now realize I was wrong and the things I said were hurtful and well. I once told the mother of a special needs child that her child was a sociopath like Eric Cartman and that the kid's behavior looked intentional to me. The mom just said, oh I haven't heard that one before, and left with her kid. I wish I could take it back, but I don't even know who she was. Poor kid, poor mom. I hope they're doing better now. I feel like that's something the real Eric would do. One time in 6th grade, one got accused of pushing a special needs girl in front of a bus. We were all lined up trying to get on the bus first. I stood my ground and was basically boxing out several other kids where I thought it was going to stop. She ran into me and stepped off of the curb as the bus was pulling in, and started yelling about how I tried to kill her. The bus driver didn't see what happened, but he told the vice principal and I got called in for it the next day. Fortunately my friends backed me up and it was pretty easy to explain. I ended up telling this story to my mother 15 years later, but it kind of counts. This happened when I was 6. When I was a little kid, my paternal grandmother had 2 dogs. Tessa, a little ditzy Maltese, and Bindi, a Rhodesian Ridgeback. Tessa was too stupid to even realize being mean was an option, so we always played with her when we visited my grandmother. But Bindi was always locked away in half of the house. When asked about her, my mother would bristle and say, Bindi doesn't like kids. My mother had her reasons to be very fearful of dogs like Bindi, as she had to put down her first dogs when I was born because they were seriously aggressive towards me. Like launch themselves at the window if they saw me aggressive. The house operated under an airlock system for the first year and a half of my life. Always 2 doors between me and the dogs. After a while my grandmother moved into the house directly behind ours and we put a gate between our shared fence. Suddenly Bindi was accessible. We kept a respectful and fearful distance from her. For the most part. One day I was in my garden playing with my very patient Labrador KD. We were playing circus. This dog was amazing. There wasn't a single thing you could do to him to make him mad, except be a horse. He hated horses. Bindi wandered into the yard and was watching us, so in a burst of foolishness I ran towards her to try and involve her in the game. She panicked and bit me. Not hard. I didn't bleed or anything. I had some indents on my arm from her teeth and it did bruise a little, but even now I'm always covered in bruises. I panicked and cried and sulked in my cubby house until I calmed down enough to go inside. I knew I couldn't tell my mother because I would get in so much trouble for playing with Bindi. The next day I was in the garden with KD and Bindi was there also, but I ignored her. I studiously ignored her for weeks. She'd come up and I'd walk away. Then some switch flicked. She was my adoring dog now. Everywhere I went she followed after me and doted after me. We'd curl up on the sofa together and I couldn't go a single step without her at my side. I think she must have felt so guilty about that bite. She was my sweet dog and we were best friends for 4 more years until she passed. My parents always remarked on this miraculous change in attitude from Bindi. How an old ornery dog who hated everyone was suddenly an oversized lapdog. Even years after she passed, they'd marvel about it. I didn't tell my mother until I was well into my 20s that the reason Bindi liked me was because she bit me. My dad was single and a couple of my friends' moms was always bringing us food. My dad would say they were just being nice cause he was a single guy raising 3 kids by himself. My aunt picked me up from school sick and we head home. She must have known what was up and had me wait in the car. Both of my friends' moms came out half-dressed and shit with my aunt yelling at my dad. I never did tell out of fear. One mom was divorced but one wasn't and I was afraid of tearing their family apart. Will take it to my grave. During my freshman year in high school I was drinking a red Gatorade at lunch. This girl said that I was sitting in her seat. I hurried and swiped my drink to find another seat. I didn't realize my Gatorade lid wasn't tightened and the drink basically splashed all over her white pants. I scurried off pretending I basically just didn't frick up this girl's pants with red Gatorade. A few weeks later my friend invited me over to play some League at his house. His sister came home and I realized that was the girl I spilled my drink on. On God, I was shitting my pants at that very moment. But luckily she seemed to have not remembered my face because she did not mention it. My friend and I still talk to this day. I've graduated high school 9 years ago, and I have never told this to him or his sister. I sometimes feel like she pretends to not remember and is actually plotting something all these years. Edited typos that I could catch before work lol. The fact that she could remember and is just pretending to not recognize you to avoid the awkwardness of that situation would probably cause me to crack and apologize. That seems like the best option to me. I was standing talking to my wife who was in the shower and I was naked waiting to get in after her. I had the urge to fart which ended up being a shart all over the bathroom mat. Luckily she never noticed and I made the excuse that I hated the feeling of the mat and I rushed it to the bin outside. She looked absolutely bemused by the situation but it was better than the shame. Around 10 years ago, when I was a teenager, my dad, who worked in the video game industry back then, got a gaming laptop, worth around $3,000 that time, as a gift he didn't have a real use for, so he gave it to me as I used to play WoW back then. He was very adamant about telling me to not put liquids, i.e., drinks etc., on my desk next to it as I'm very clumsy. So one night, I made myself a huge ass bowl of cornflakes, and put the bowl next to the laptop because I forgot my spoon in the kitchen. I sometimes put a blanket over myself when I was gaming and when I got up from the chair that night, I somehow managed to flip the bowl over with my blanket and the milk flooded the open laptop. I got incredibly scared, turned the laptop off and cleaned it like my life depended on it and went to bed. I obviously broke the laptop as I didn't get it to turn on anymore, but I was too scared to tell my dad what happened, especially since he repeatedly told me to be careful, and told him how I didn't have any idea what happened and how it worked perfectly fine on the night before. I still feel incredibly bad about it. Update, I told my dad. And although I can't believe it, as so many of you said that he most likely knew, I got away with murder. He honestly didn't know. He wasn't angry at all, laughed it off and is really impressed with the amount of likes I got and how so many people are invested into this LMAO. On a different note, I'm really happy I've told this story here as it ended up with me telling him and apologizing for my mistake. Feels really good. When I was 14 or 15, I would listen to music and just imagine I was a character in one of the shows I would watch, like Teen Titans, Totally Spies or, God Forgive Me, Hamtaro. The day I tried to listen to music and imagine like this stupid crossover between them and jump around my room, my brother had actually heard my jumping around from previous days and hid in my closet. He observed all the stupid shit I did and mixture of shows combined because I would whisper quips from the characters. Instantly reacted by trying to choke him as soon as he revealed himself, but he just laughed his ass off the entire time. Only he and I ever knew, and I've been embarrassed by it ever since it happened. Developed paranoia of being watched, but I'm actually thankful for that now. I finally got that off my chest, phew. It no longer has any power over me. Edit for spelling, and I really wish this wasn't my best rated comment, but thanks for leaving such kind replies. It's okay and totally normal. Sure, it is embarrassing, but I can guarantee you weren't the only one who did stuff like this. Heck, I even filmed myself doing it. We were just having fun, smiley face. Contrary to what the internet believes, it's okay for kids to be cringy. They're kids. That's what they do, ya know. During Christmas last year, my mother got completely shit-faced. She had already prepared a lot of food, but there was still good being made. My mom and I only have each other, so it was just me and her. She had made a big thing of pork and asked if I'd like to try it. I said yes, but she was so drunk she couldn't even cut a piece off. I was just 17 at the time and had little experience with alcohol, so I didn't know how badly she was inebriated. Maybe 20 minutes later, she was trying to take the pork out of the oven and dropped it all on the floor. All the oil spilled out to coat the kitchen floor as well. So as she tried to clumsily recover the pork, she slipped and hit her head on the floor. She wasn't knocked unconscious, but she was dazed and confused. I had to clean up the food off the ground, clean the oil off my mother, and carry her to bed. I then spent the rest of the night cleaning the kitchen and driving around my town looking for a place to eat on Christmas. I didn't find anything. To this day, the only person who knows is my girlfriend. I never told the full details of it because I'm honestly too messed up from what I witnessed, and the fact of the matter is that nothing I reveal would even change what happened. I visited my mother's hometown in Mexico during the summer with her and my younger sister. This was the week after the plane crash in Durango happened, and we were heading there for a bit, so I got super anxious and it kept me up a couple of days after we got there, along with the time difference. We stayed at our great uncle's house and I was sleeping on the futon on the ground while my sister and mom shared the bed. My anxiety and difficulty adjusting to the time difference meant that I was up pretty late at night. I was just on my phone playing some mobile games when I heard a gunshot. I live in a dangerous neighborhood back home, so I was used to hearing this kind of stuff. Then 2 more shots. This time it was more close. No one else woke up and I was just lying there thinking someone must be drunk. It was wedding season, and I should try to get some sleep because it could also be a hallucination. The next morning, my mom asked me if I was up last night. I told her that I was. Then she asked if I heard anything. I let her know that I heard some gunshots, but I didn't think about it much. Her face went pale. Apparently, the neighbor 2 houses down had murdered his wife the night I was up with a shotgun. It was a small town, so everyone knew, and he was quickly arrested. She had been shot at least twice. I asked if anyone else was hurt last night, but she told me that it was just the woman who was killed. The town was close to the city and they were strict about their gun control. So I should be happy that I know about what caused those 2 loud shots, right? Well, I think a lot about that first shot. The man only had a shotgun and he was the only one reported shooting that night. The first shot, to my knowledge, was more likely from a handgun. Who was that first person? Did the wife conceal her own gun and shot in self-defense? Was it a drunk guy like I initially thought it was? Did someone else die that night but no one else knew about? I think I was the only one who heard that first shot, since everyone else only talk about those 2 loud ones. I tried asking to see if they heard anything else, but they didn't. Everyone knows each other like family in this town, so surely they knew who did what. But even they didn't know that the neighbor was capable of doing this. I'm not sure I want to know who fired that first shot. Was walking my dog on a dirt road next my subdivision. This dirt road ran parallel to several backyards and had lots of trees on either side for concealment. For me, it was an unofficial nature trail because it allowed me to get away from people. One morning I spotted 2 of my neighbors, who were married to other people, making out and obviously about to do the deed. Since they were so into each other, they didn't hear me coming up till my dog started making noise. For several seconds we all looked at each other, saying nothing, until the couple took off running in the direction of their respective backyards. We all knew each other, but I wasn't friends with the 2 nor their spouses. Long story short, I kept my mouth shut about what I saw, and neither of the lovebirds ever said anything to me. Have no idea if this had been a one-time thing or a long-term affair. When I was 8 years old, we had pet mice. This one mouse got pregnant and she was starting to eat some of her babies. This upset me so much. I rushed to tell my stepfather. I was so distraught and mad at the mama mouse. Why was she eating her young? What a bad mom. My stepfather's reaction? He made me kill the mom. Literally. He put her in a sink full of water and literally dragged me in there, grabbed my hand and forced me to hold this mouse underwater. I was struggling and crying the whole time to take my hand away. This frickin' traumatized me, and what's worse, he then took the rest of the baby mice that had lived, and he fed them to this frickin' fish he had. I'm not sure I remember the name. I think he called it an Oscar fish, but maybe that was his name for it. I was so young. He was a very abusive, deranged guy. My mom finally left after he beat her within an inch of her life. I've never told anyone that story. I'm too ashamed. I know I was a kid and I'm clear that he forced me. But it still doesn't take the pain and shame away. Edit. OMG, I sincerely did not even think this was something that would be seen. I'm not sure what to say, but thank you all for the replies. I'm trying to read each one, but I can't promise a response. I got kids of my own and Reddit is my guilty pleasure, mostly when they're asleep. Lol, I really have never told anyone this story and I was scared. Self-conscious of sharing it here. I only did because I figured it would be buried at the bottom. Thank you guys for all the support and understanding, it really just. My heart is so full from the overwhelming compassion. I don't even have words. He was a very messed up, sick individual, but my mom didn't go back when she left. My grandmother actually ended up getting custody of my brother and I shortly after they separated. And life did get much safer and better. And yes, I am currently seeing and have been seeing a therapist finally. I am working through a lot of my past traumas. Honestly though, I haven't even shared this with her. Trying to process a whole childhood of trauma takes time and this just wasn't even on the list of worse events. It really is something I've never talked about. Because for a long time, I felt like the guilty one. The bad person. My therapist has said that I take on a rescuer role in a lot of my relationships and it probably stems from this. I wish to God I could have been the rescuer to my mice. Thanks again, kind strangers. Sincerely. Edit 2. You guys are amazing. As bad and evil as some people can be. Reading through your comments, I'm so touched and grateful and in awe of how good, and kind, compassionate, thoughtful, empathetic, and every good word I could possibly think of, people can be. Thank you guys, so much. I'm seriously choked up reading through the replies. I am that touched. And by complete strangers at that. It means a lot to me. I resent my 7-year-old stepson and feel like he ruined my life. I waited a long time to get married and my husband is my dream man, but his son has severe behavior problems. He lives with us the majority of the time. His mom is in and out of his life and when she is around she really messes with his head. I try to be understanding and loving, but I am only human and I'm exhausted. He destroys everything in sight when he doesn't get his way, smashes toys and rips curtains off his wall, digs holes in his walls with his scissors. He is no longer allowed to use sharp objects unsupervised. Every time I try to decorate the house and try to make things look nice, he ruins the things I bought. I bought him new pajamas the other day and paid way more than I normally would because he loved them and really wanted them. Within an hour of them being delivered, they had 3 massive holes through them and he thought it was funny. He laughs when I get hurt. The dog jumped on me and I hit my head on the table and he laughed hysterically. When his dad tried to correct him and tell him it's not okay to laugh at people when they are hurt, he said he didn't care. He almost killed our dog while I was in the shower, so now I can't leave her alone with him. I took him to visit my family and he hurt their family pet and we haven't been invited back since. He says cruel, hurtful things to me and his dad constantly, and when we try to talk to him about it he said he enjoys hurting people. He has no empathy, he is always angry, he lies about everything, he is manipulative and very falsely charming around people who don't know him well. Every time I see a story on the news about a kid killing their parents, I wonder if that is my future. I had to quit my job that I love to be here full time to care for him because no one wants to babysit him. We have him in counseling. We have talked to his doctor. It is not getting better and it seems to be getting worse. I had a total mental breakdown several months ago and seriously considered suicide. I am now on antidepressants and anxiety medication. I go to counseling regularly and am doing everything I can to keep myself sane, but most days I don't want to get out of bed. I always feel like my chest is going to explode. I'm overwhelmed, exhausted, and I don't see any hope of it getting better. I'm open with people around me that things are hard, but I feel like if I admit that I resent him and that it is getting harder to love him, that I will be viewed as a bad stepmom. So I keep going. I do my best to correct the bad behavior. I shower him in praise when he does something good. I love him when it's hard and hope that I can make a difference. But I cannot shake the resentment when I've given up everything and there is nothing left of the person I was before I got married. I lived with my aunt in 4th grade. She had a neighbor that lived downstairs, so they had a shared backyard. Rule was always make sure the latch is closed on the gate so the dog doesn't get out. I always made sure to lock it. One day I forgot. The dog got out, Chihuahua, and was ate by a big neighbor dog. Blamed it on the neighbor. She cussed him out and would badmouth him any chance she could. I was too scared to tell her and she still doesn't know. Take that one to your grave. Nah, they just have to keep it a secret until everyone else involved is dead. Then it's story time. I'm a gay man. While on the internet I met this older man and we clicked. Played games together, talked a lot, FaceTime, etc. I figured we were good friends until one day he mentioned the only reason he started talking to me was because I seemed gay. He was correct. So after a few dates, we ended up hooking up a few times. Then literally weeks later my parents invited me to an event to meet my distant family members. I didn't really want to go, but my cousin convinced me it would be fun. I went there and knew practically no one. My grandfather has 11 sisters and 2 brothers, so there were many unfamiliar faces. Except for one. It was my internet friend. We pretended to be meeting for the first time. Obviously we kept quiet about it while trying to figure out how we were related. He's essentially my grandfather's sister's first son. Not only that, but he's married with 3 kids. He told me he was single. After that awkward encounter we distanced ourselves from each other, although occasionally we do still play games together on Steam. I had sex with my first cousin once removed, and a married man. It's my little secret, mainly because I doubt anyone wants to hear it. I put a knife down my throat and cut up to die. Almost did it. Was rushed to hospital and they told me I had an upper GI bleed, possibly from an ulcer, but didn't understand how it happened. I was in hospital for 5 days and I went along with what the doctors said. I never received any mental help and was discharged on my own. After a while I got better on my own, but it was a rough ride. Edit. I appreciate the support and awards. It was a crazy hard time in my life. I have a child and a good life now. Suicide is hard. I was one that never told anyone or reached out for help. Those are the hard ones to catch. If you ever seen people struggle in life, please be kind. You never know what they are going through. When I was about 6 or 7, honestly not sure. I was outside playing with my sister and family friends late at night in my pa country town. The parents were inside the fence and couldn't really see where we were, but there were a few of us together, so guess it seemed safe enough. 2 men approached us from the local bar or whatever and picked me out. One asked if I knew what a blow job was. I didn't. I was very young and naive, so he asked if I wanted to come with them to find out and have some fun. I honestly almost went with him because I was curious, and it was just before my parents' divorce, so I suspect some sad things had been happening in my life. I don't recall much at all from my childhood at all, but this night sticks out for some reason. Thank frick I had some sense to tell them I wanted to ask my parents first. They lost their nerve after that and left. That wasn't the last time something like that almost happened before I was the age of 9. I can't believe I'm going to spill this, especially on the internet, because I'm more embarrassed about the stupidity of 13-year-old me than anything. When I was 13, a nefarious kid in the neighborhood was a shoplifter, and I had just started smoking. A new gas station just opened up, and back in the day, I'm showing my age here, they left cartons of cigarettes out in the open. Anyway, this kid would steal cartons. So I asked him to steal a carton for me. He said he would, but asked me what I would trade for it. He wanted my Game Boy, but I said I'd give him something better. One of my mom's rings. So in I go, to my mom's room, open her jewelry box and bust out a single diamond ring and give it to this asshole, and he gives me a carton of cigs. To this day, I keep telling myself it was costume jewelry to make myself feel better, but I honestly don't know. I'm sorry, Mom. That was a pretty shitty trade, TBH. When I was in 6th grade, our math teacher had a contest where teams of 2 could spend a week guessing how many jelly beans were in this large container, and whatever team got the closest would win all the jelly beans. Kids would be up there trying to count individual jelly beans before class and walking around it all day sizing it up. Somehow, the teacher let it slip that the amount was written on a piece of paper under the screw-on lid of the container. So I concocted a plan. I told this kid Nate that I would split my share of jelly beans with him if he did the following. When we were walking down to lunch, he had to tell the teacher he forgot his lunchbox and run back to the classroom to get it. While he was there, he would open the container and see what the number was. Then he would fill out a form with me and my partner's name on it. I told him it couldn't be him because then the teacher would be suspicious of him being the one alone in the classroom. I also told him not to put the exact number because that's fishy too. It has to be off by just a few. Needless to say, I won the jelly beans at the end of the week. When it came time to pay up with Nate, I gave him one handful of jelly beans and that was it. He got really upset and said that wasn't fair. I basically told him, what are you going to do about it, and ate 300 jelly beans over the course of the next 3 days. I promise I'm not as much of an asshole as I sound like in 6th grade, just really like sugar. I've only ever told my wife this story and I feel like she doesn't trust me anymore after hearing it. You did plan it out well, but good luck getting Nate to do your dirty work for you in the future. Ends justify the means, mahahahahaha. Nice. You have made it to the end already. Thank you for watching. If you aren't already subscribed, please do so, as there will be more videos like this in the near future.